Hey, if you're in need of a sign and are in the Chambersburg area, you need not look any further than Bear Sign Service. They offer lighted and non-lighted signs, vehicle lettering and wraps, flags and flagpoles, and can ship anywhere. With over 75 years of being in business, Bear Sign Service is the oldest full-service sign company in Franklin County. So check them out at bearsign.com. That's BAERSIGN.com, and tell them you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg.
This episode of Addressing Gettysburg is brought to you in part by me, audiobook narrator Mike Scott, narrator of Savis Beattie's Bloody Autumn, the Shenandoah Valley campaign of 1864, and Unlike Anything That Ever Floated, the Monitor and Virginia and the Battle of Hampton Roads. If you are an author or publisher interested in having your titles produced as audiobooks, or even just in learning more about the process, give me a shout. You can find my contact info on my website, MikeScottVoice.com. That's MikeScottVoice.com.
Are you ready for your next great Civil War read? Then try the new historical novel, The Heavens Falling, by Jonathan Lucci. Follow the members of the Dawson family through the Civil War, from the halls of Congress to the bloody fields of battle, and from the decks of gunboats to the solitude of Lincoln's office. The Heavens Falling is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle, or visit theheavensfalling.com to order. That's theheavensfalling.com.
Want the freshest cup of coffee in Gettysburg? Then visit Bantam Roasters, formerly 82 Cafe at 82 Steinware Avenue. They roast all of their coffee in-house, and they have a full coffee bar to keep you caffeinated during your trip. Visit them at www.raggededgerc.com for their menu and shipping options for all of their freshly roasted coffee. Use promo code Hancock for 10% off your order in the cafe.
Hi, this is Anthony Bordner, and or you can say, are you still a patron, or should we?
Yeah, I'm yeah.
All right, so you can say, hi, this is Anthony Bordner.
You might need to write this down, man. I'm telling you, I am shit.
You know who you are?
Yes, but
That's all you need to do. You need to know who you are.
All right.
So yes, my name is Anthony Bordner. I'm a huge fan. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Okay, all right. Let me just practice this.
Practice. Yeah, have fun with it. Like,
All right. Can you give me like a minute to think about this?
you want me to shut the door and give you
No. Because I suck at like. Well, you did this to me on freaking.
walk you through it?
Yeah.
Okay, go to the microphone. Hi, this is Anthony Bordner.
Hi, this is Anthony Bordner.
I'm a huge fan of Addressing Gettysburg.
I'm a huge fan of Addressing Gettysburg.
It is the greatest, most quality podcast ever.
It is the greatest and most quality. See, you staring at me does not help.
Okay. It is the greatest and most quality podcast ever.
The greatest and most quality podcast ever.
And you're listening to it
And you're listening to it
right now.
right now.
God, you're so lucky.
God, you're so lucky. Are you recording it?
Yeah.
Were you really?
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide. And today we are talking about Robinson's Division. Also, we are welcoming a guide who has never been on the show before, but is a longtime listener, first-time caller. And he's also a member of the Addressing Gettysburg Book Club, run by our buddy Steve Byers. And his name is Tim Pierce. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, so Tim, this is your first time on the show, and every time we have somebody come on for the first time, we ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves. So give us a little bit of background to you. Were you born a licensed battlefield guide?
I was born No, I am. So I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
The Electric City.
The Electric City. Wow, you know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I watched The Office.
Oh, okay. Oh, I never did.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up there in Northeast PA. Joined the Navy. Moved away, got married, and 2 kids. My wife was a Navy nurse. I was a Navy corpsman, so we were fraternizing. So then she was in for 12 years, so I moved around with her after I got out. Got out of the Navy. Well, I went to school part-time started out as an engineering major. That didn't go well. So then I switched to history. So I went to school to become a history teacher. So I've been teaching history for 25 years at a little school up near Scranton. And took the guide test several times. So if you take the guide test and don't do well, don't lose hope. because you know, you keep going. So I became a guide in 2016. And so this is just past my 7th year. I would encourage anybody to do it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it looks awesome if you could pass the test. But you several times you failed, you said?
Okay, so I didn't fail. I just didn't get a high enough score to get to the next
you didn't make
step.
the cut.
So I didn't know what guides were. I was down here. I brought my daughter down here with the Girl Scouts. I saw a guy with a uniform and said, "What are you?" I didn't know. And he explained. So then this was maybe September. So then the test was being given in December. So I took the test after reading Coddington, and I did okay. Didn't get to the next step. Then I took it again, and then I finally passed it in 2016.
It's funny. Bob Steenstra says that it's the same thing. He didn't know what a guide was, and then he came here and just accidentally found out, and then they were given the test 3 months later. So he's like, "Oh, I'll read a couple books," and he got it the first time out.
Oh,
but that was 30 years ago.
Yeah,
and he's like, all you had to do back then was know how to spell your name and write who commanded
before
both
the
armies.
movie.
Before the movie,
yeah.
And then now they're like, you know, who saved the Union Army? Right. Joshua Chamberlain. As long as you know that, you know, and who was the poor put upon division commander in Lee's army? General Pickett.
Right.
You know. And then, okay, good. All right.
The blue was over there and the gray were over there.
Right,
so
exactly. It was a lot different back in those days.
Yeah, but Bob's really awesome though, so he knows a lot.
He does.
But yeah, so I took the test, and my daughter, who's smarter than me, said, "Why do you don't even know what guides do? Why do you want to go through all that?" And I said, "Well, I teach. I know what teaching is." So we took a tour. We signed up for a tour, and I went out with Fred Wieners. And it was, you know, it's a really interesting experience because I studied parts of the field for years, but I never put the whole picture together. And I went out with Fred, and it was the first time that I saw the whole story in a logical order.
Okay,
and that was really awesome.
So. What do you mean? Like you would just go out to?
I would go to Devil's Den. I would go to Little Round Top. I would go to the Stony Ridge. I would go to Culp's Hill, Stony Hill. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I'd never put all the pieces together in a logical form until then. So
that makes sense. Okay.
So go out with a guide.
Absolutely, go out with a guide.
And I mean, from my own personal experience, I had that experience. To know how valuable it is to have somebody do that, to have somebody explain it, and have somebody put all the pieces together.
No, it's honestly, it is the only way to fly is to get a guide, and also to listen to this show and ask a Gettysburg guide when we have guides on the show like we do right now. So let's get started. Tim, today we're talking about Robinson's Division. Did you choose this?
I did. It was one of the areas that I was always more interested in, but didn't take time to specifically study. Okay. It's a part of the field that I think a lot of people sort of drive over and don't pay that much attention to.
Yep.
So I just wanted to learn more about it and you know, learn more about the individuals, the people, the different leaders, and even some of the soldiers that I didn't really know about before. Being a former enlisted guy, I don't like to focus on all the officers all the time.
Of course not. What branch were you in?
I was in the Navy.
In the Navy?
Yeah.
And so as a Navy guy, what's so interesting about Civil War infantry?
Well, I was a Navy hospital corpsman, so I spent most of my time with the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So I was with the infantry. But, you know, I don't know. Just ground pounders.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I guess the Civil War Navy, naval battles and stuff, they don't really get a lot of attention.
They do not. I should probably focus more on them. But,
well, I mean, you know, I don't know anything about them really, but like I would imagine it's more, I wouldn't say interesting, but, you know, those old wooden ships and, you know, I mean, we all seen Master and Commander in that opening scene where the the canister shot just like rakes over the whole deck, and the kid comes up with the big chunk of wood through his forearm and everything.
Right.
Like that's a nightmare. I mean, that sounds very interesting, at least cinematically. Maybe it's not so interesting when you read about it.
It probably just like this, when you see somebody have their head taken off by a cannonball, it's cool to read about, but interesting, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Interesting might not be the word. Yeah. But anyway, so we're doing Robinson's Division. Why'd you pick Robinson's Division?
It's just an area of the field that I wanted to personally study more about and to learn more about and to see how it fit in with the other parts of the first day's battle, because I find the first day's battle fascinating. And of course, it doesn't get as much attention. The other part of the field gets more attention, the Iron Brigade, and then the 11th Corps, gets more attention. But between them, what happened between them?
Right.
Between the Iron Brigade and the 11th Corps. And that's what Robinson's division did.
Yeah, you're right, because they're kind of stuck there in the middle, which is not really like the best spot to be, the way they were positioned.
Right.
And as we'll find out later with the 16th Maine, like, there's some pretty good stories there.
Yeah, there are definitely really great stories that have largely been forgotten. Or not even forgotten, but not even brought up in order to be forgotten.
Right.
And there's really only one unit that gets the attention over there, and that is the Southern Brigade of Iverson.
Yeah.
And because they were slaughtered,
yes.
so people focus on that. But who slaughtered them?
I mean,
why?
Slaughtered.
Some of them.
If you look at the 16th Maine, what was it, like 40 guys showed up the next roll call?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
a lot of those guys were prisoners, though.
But still, they're not effective anymore. They're out of the game.
True.
Here it says, and this is from Robinson's report. He says that they went into battle with less than 2,500 officers and men and sustained a loss of 1,667, of which 124 were commissioned officers. That sounds like they had a pretty rough deal.
Very high losses.
Yeah.
Very high losses.
And yet we don't really know about them that much. And so we're going to try to remedy that today, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So go ahead and why don't you start us off? Tell us the story of Robinson's Division on July 1st, 1863.
Okay. So they're going to arrive in Gettysburg around 11:30 in the morning on July 1st. Mm-hmm. And they're originally put into reserve. They were the reserve for the First Corps. They're going to be put in the position near the seminary. Depending on the maps you look at, sometimes they're stacked up behind, like to the east of the seminary, and other times they're on the west of the seminary. So I think when Baxter's brigade or Paul's brigade gets there, and they're put into position to build breastworks on the western side of the seminary, where all the buildings are. There's like a reproduction sort of breastwork thing there today. And then Baxter's going to show up around noon. And as Baxter shows up, so one of the things you have to do is look at these things in relation to, the saying that what did they know and when did they know it? As Baxter is arriving, Rhodes is arriving up on Oak Hill, and he's putting his artillery out there. So what happens next is a U.S. reaction to the Confederates coming out on the field. So what happens when Rhodes comes out onto Oak Hill is two regiments from Baxter's brigade, the 11th Pennsylvania and the 97th New York, are sent over. They're on the east slope of like Lee's, where Lee's headquarters is today, the Mary Thompson House. They're on the east slope of that toward the town, and they're going over toward Oak Ridge. And they're going over there to take care of whatever problem comes up, whatever the result of Rhodes coming out. So the 11th Pennsylvania under Richard Coulter, nicknamed Fighting Dick, goes over there, and they come out near where the Doubleday bed and breakfast is today, and they're going to get into a position. They're going to get into a line, and they're going to start sort of going across the field there, sort of toward the left of where the road is today. And they're going across the field. And one feature that's not there today, there are actually a couple features that aren't there today. There were a couple hedgerows there that aren't there anymore.
Okay.
And was a really stout wooden fence. So if you're familiar with the area where where the 88th Pennsylvania Memorial is, and it was across the field to the west, and it's always talked about as being a stout fence. So they approach it, the 11th Pennsylvania and the 97th New York approach it, 97th New York under Charles Wheelock. And as they approach that fence, they're actually coming into contact with Confederate skirmishers. And the Confederate skirmishers are from Iverson's brigade, which is a whole other issue about skirmishers and Iverson's brigade. Okay, so when they get over there, they eventually find out that there aren't enough of them, because as the Confederates get into position and the 11th Corps comes up to their right. So what they're trying to do, because if you look at the morning fight, so on the morning of July 1st, and you have the units of the First Corps, and you have Cutler, who was fighting around the railroad cut, and his men were forced back into the woods. They retreated back into the woods. Okay, but then in the afternoon lull, or the late morning, early afternoon lull, they come back out into the field, and then when Rhodes puts his cannons up on Oak Hill, they're starting to enfilade the United States line. They're starting to fire down to the south and enfilade the U.S. line. So Cutler, there's a little bit of maneuvering, but he pulls his men back into the Wills Woods there. And so when Coulter and Wheelock go up, off to their left, Coulter's going to swing around, and his men are going to start facing. They're going to be in the tree line facing to the north. And then when Rhodes's men start to advance, the rest of Baxter's brigade is going to be set up to help the 11th and the 97th, the 11th PA and the 97th New York. So you have, 12th Massachusetts, 88th PA, 90th PA, and the 11th PA are going to come out, and they're going to form. Originally, they're going to come out, and they're going to be marching forward, and they're going to form this salient with part of the brigade, because the 11th and the 97th are going to pull back, and they're going to go into a line of battle facing to the west, and then the 12th Mass is going to be on their right, and then then down along the Emmitsburg Road, you're going to have the rest of Baxter's brigade, the 88th PA, 83rd New York. Okay, so then again, this is happening in reaction to what the Confederates are doing. So what the original plan was by the U.S. troops was to make contact between the First Corps, which would be the Second Division now, which is Robinson's division, and the 11th Corps. But they never could make a connection because there just weren't enough troops there. So several soldiers mentioned that there were about 400 yards in between the 1st and 11th Corps, which, is never a good thing. So as the Confederates advanced, I try not to focus too much on the Confederate advance because I'm trying to focus on Robinson's division, but the disjointed nature of the Confederate advance, where you have O'Neill's brigade, which actually only attacks with 3 of their regiments, and then the brigade of Iverson is going to be attacking as well. So the thought is that O'Neill is going to come across in the neighborhood of the McLean farm, and he's going to attack, and the comments vary, but it was a very disorganized attack, and the U.S. troops are able to relatively easily push back O'Neill's troops. So they're pushed back in disarray, helped by the artillery of the 11th Corps. So you have Hubert Dilger and William Wheeler, who are 11th Corps artillery, and they're going to be helping fire into the left flank of the Confederates as they come across that ridge, and also helped by the 45th New York. The 45th New York is the 11th Corps, and they're going to come across the field to the east of the McLean farm, and they're going to fire into the Confederates coming across, the Alabamians coming across, take some prisoners. But so the First Corps doesn't necessarily like to admit that they were helped by the 11th Corps. a lot of times, but they definitely were helped by the 11th Corps in that situation. Okay, so now you have Robinson's troops. They are, they're firing their muskets. They're expending a lot of ammunition. They're taking casualties. And then after O'Neill's troops go back, then you have a whole other group of Confederates coming up to the west, on the left of these U.S. troops. So what happens is Robinson decides to shift his troops. So you have the soldiers that were facing the Emmitsburg Road to the north that just repelled O'Neill's attack. They're going to be shifted up to the other side of this salient, this V-type formation, and they're going to get into position as the Confederates come across the open fields. And there's a little bit of a debate about exactly what's happening here, because Iverson did have skirmishers. Why they did, and to a certain extent, so the Confederates are watching these attacks. Rhodes is on Oak Hill, Ewell's on Oak Hill, and they're watching what's happening. But what they did notice now in the trees down by the Doubleday Inn, what's his name? Cutler, thank you. Cutler's men are in those trees down there, but there's a gap between those trees and the 11th Pennsylvania, and the Confederates are seeing that. So when the Confederates are coming across, they're heading for that gap. And then what they didn't necessarily know is that there were other troops, other of Robinson's troops behind that ridge, Henry Baxter's troops. So as the Confederates come across, the U.S. troops have their flags down behind the stone wall. And we don't really exactly know. There was a stone wall there. There were actually two of them. There was one, I think, similar to where the one is today as you come down Oak Hill, and you're coming across the Emmitsburg Road. There's a stone wall right to the right there. I think that was there, but I think it was over a little bit to the west. And then that went for a little ways, and then further down, there was another stone wall at an angle, and we're not exactly sure where that was.
So you're talking about the stone wall across from the observation tower? That one?
That's one of them. That was one of them that was there.
So you're saying that one was, you're thinking was
I think it was a little further to the west.
Further out into the field?
Further out into the field.
Gotcha.
And then, so the 11th, the 12th Mass was behind that one. And then, because they were a little bit further ahead. But remember, you have that fence in the middle of the field. Yeah. And that is often forgotten about today, because that's definitely going to have an impact, because they talk about it being a stout wooden fence. Mm-hmm. It's a post and rail fence. It's not like one of the worm fences or snake rail fences. Okay, so the Confederates are coming across, and that's going to sort of that fence is going to have an impact on them as they come across. So they're going to continue. They're going to continue marching across, heading for that gap between Cutler's and Baxter's men. But so what's going to happen though, as all this is happening, and again, this is happening really quickly. We're going into 1:30, 2 o'clock ish, and Paul's men are going to be brought over, and this is a little hard to figure out based on the accounts, but it seems that Paul's men, the 94th New York, so the 94th New York was a really large regiment. They had about 545 guys or so, because the 105th New York had just been combined with them. 105th New York had taken so many casualties, they were down to 3 companies, so they were combined with the 94th New York, commanded by Adrian Root. Okay, so they're going to apparently get into this gap. So as Iverson's men come across, Baxter / Paul now is going to have a pretty decent line, a pretty solid line. So as the Confederates come up and Iverson's men start coming up toward the what they didn't know but is the U.S. line, the U.S. troops are going to stand up and deliver this tremendous volley into them and just decimate their ranks. And they're just going to take a tremendous amount of casualties. There are a couple different events that happen in there. There's a little bit of confusion about what's going on, whether there's going to be a charge or whether U.S. troops are going to stand there on the line and fire at them. So seems to be this spontaneous charge. There was in the 97th New York, the lieutenant colonel was on his horse and he could see what was happening, and the colonel he was on foot, wheelock. So the lieutenant colonel, I think his name was Spoford, he ordered a charge, and and he said, he admitted later, he said, if this didn't go well, I would have been cashiered from the service. He said I had absolutely no right to do this. But he did it, and he accepted responsibility for it. It just happened to go well for them, and so the U.S. troops are rushing down. Now, this is a little confusing too, because I think the monuments on the field are a little disorganized. I think at least the 83rd New York and the 88th PA are maybe reversed, and there may be some other issues there with the monuments, because like the flags that they captured, there were several battle flags that the U.S. troops captured. And if you look at, I think the 88th got the 23rd North Carolina flag, and they weren't really in the position where the 23rd was, so they possibly were in a different position. And also, in addition to that, the colonel of the 12th Massachusetts said, if you look at the placement in the monuments, he said the 88th Pennsylvania monument is here next to us, but if you look at the War Department maps, and I know that the 83rd Pennsylvania was next to, or the 83rd New York was next to us. So there's a little confusion about where the monuments are. But whatever.
The
that
monuments
means.
can be confusing.
Yeah, because they moved a little bit too. So the U.S. troops are going to charge down. They're going to take a bunch of prisoners from Iverson's brigade, and then they're going to be falling back up the hill. So one of the things that the soldiers mention quite a bit are sharpshooters. And so when the U.S. troops charge down to capture whatever of Iverson's men that they can,
right,
they mention that there are Confederate sharpshooters firing at them from Oak Hill. And who are they? So I think there's a little confusion, and this I'm trying to figure out myself. There's a little confusion between what's a sharpshooter and what's a skirmisher, because the Confederate War Department authorized sharpshooters, in response to like Berdan sharpshooters, like we should have our own sharpshooters. And Rhodes is the only one who really took them up on that for the most part. And there was a good article, Timothy Orr, I think is his name, wrote it.
Yeah.
And so he talks about how, we're many of us are familiar with Blackford sharpshooters,
right,
but he talks about how all of the brigades in Rhodes's division had sharpshooters. So, I think sometimes there's a little confusion between what's a sharpshooter and what's a skirmisher. It seems that they sometimes talk about those terms interchangeably. So when they say that there were no skirmishers, but there were sharpshooters, there were no sharpshooters, but there were skirmishers. So were these guys from the 5th Alabama, or were they other sharpshooters because all the regiments had some sharpshooters? But either way, the U.S. troops talk about when they were retreating back up the ridge after going down to Iverson's men to capture whoever they could capture, that sharpshooters were firing into them, hitting U.S. troops and Confederate troops. So the bullets didn't really have any particular liking for whoever they hit or didn't hit. Okay, so then the U.S. troops retreat back up the hill. They bring the prisoners up. They're going to send the prisoners back to holding areas. The provost guard is going to guard those guys, and then Baxter's guys are running out of bullets. They're starting to, and there's some other incidents that happen, like Charles Wheelock from the 97th New York. He has a captured flag and he's going to take that and he's going to wave it over his head, and Robinson's going to order him to send it back. And Baxter says, "We captured this and we're going to keep it." They take the flag and they slice it with a sword. And then there's a captain who's, and this is actually, I don't think it's correct. In Fonz's book on the first day, he talks about this captain waving a flagpole, and the captain was shot in the head and killed. He was shot, but he wasn't killed, so that was the difference.
Okay.
But so Robinson was not very happy about that, and just some things like that were happening. Okay, so Robinson's men are running low on ammunition. Paul's men are coming up. So I already talked about the 94th New York, so they're coming up. And then you have the other units, the 16th Maine and the 107th Pennsylvania coming up on the right of the 94th New York. But then Paul's brigade is going to be split. The 104th New York and the 13th Massachusetts are going to be marching straight ahead. They're gonna come over from the seminary where they built the breastworks that the First Corps is going to use as they retreat. The Iron Brigade and those guys are going to use. But Paul's men are going to be coming across the same way Baxter's guys did. And those 3 regiments are going to be facing to the west, the 94th, the 16th, and the 107th. The 107th, by the way, is commanded by a guy named James Thompson, who was born in Adams County, Pennsylvania. He was actually born, from what I can find out, born in Fairfield. So
interesting.
Yeah, so
he was in the 107th?
He's the one. So the colonel of the 107th is sick during the Gettysburg campaign. So Lieutenant Colonel Thompson, in a lot of that was another thing that I had to try to figure out. A lot of times he's called Mick Thompson, but his real name is Thompson. His middle name is McLean or something like that. So a lot of times he's called Mac Thompson, but his name is Thompson. But he's born in Adams County. So then we have the 104th New York that go off to the north, and they're going to be going over where the 88th PA and the 83rd New York were. So we have they're not going to go all the way to the Emmitsburg Road. They're going to go up because there was where the short tower is today. There was an oak grove there, hence the name Oak Ridge.
Okay.
So they're going to go up to where their monuments are today. Where that windy road. The 104th New York is up at the top of that, and the 13th Massachusetts at the bottom of it. So they're going to be in that position. So basically, you're creating another V formation. So part of Baxter's guys are going to retreat. The 97th New York is going to be left there. The rest of them are going to retreat, and they're going to go back over to the south side of the Wills Woods, and they're going to be helping the other guys, a couple of the regiments from the names will come to me of Cutler's brigade are helping guard Stewart's battery and James Stewart, and then so Baxter's men are gonna move over there to help do that as well. So Baxter's guys are out of bullets. So one of the problems is that they didn't have anybody coming up supplying them with ammunition. I don't know if they were just so far out of the way where, nobody was really getting a whole lot of ammunition at the time. Yeah. So Baxter's guys are running out of bullets. So they're retreating, and they're taking bullets from the dead and wounded that are lying around. So Paul's men are there now. Part of them facing to the west, part of them facing to the north. Okay, so again, the Confederates the Confederates don't know any of this. Mm-hmm. They're doing their thing as the U.S. troops are doing their thing. So Iverson's survivors, some of them are gonna. In fact, one of them was he was a sharpshooter. One of Iverson's men. He said we sharpshooters were able to draw back and retreat out of that area where we were decimated. He didn't say decimated, but so they're gonna fall back, and then you're gonna have the next Confederate attack happening. And so you're going to have Daniel come along. Daniel's going to come along from basically sort of where Iverson was, and he's going to have to split his guys from. Some of them are going to go south toward the McPherson farm, and some of them are going to have to swing over to help the new attack of Daniel and Ramseur. So Ramseur's brigade is going to be brought up, and then O'Neill's men are going to be reorganized, and the Confederates are going to make their next attack. Now, again, this is a little confusing because there's different accounts make it appear, and I think it's accurate, but there's not a lot written about it, that Ramseur actually made a couple attacks. He made an initial attack, and then he pulled back, and then he's going to come again, which is going to be eventually turn out to be the final attack. Because some of the U.S. units are going to say that they went down into the field where Iverson's men were attacked, like the 94th PA, or I'm sorry, the 94th New York in particular, and they're going to talk about getting into a fight and not being real happy about it because they're like, whoa, who's the crazy guy who ordered us down here? And then so they're going to pick up some prisoners, and then they're going to fall back to that same position, and eventually, the Cutler's guys are going to be pulled out. They're going to be pulled out to go toward the seminary. Okay, so most of the other accounts that happened from the U.S. troops from Robinson's division are from the 104th New York and the 13th Massachusetts, largely from the 104th New York, who's commanded by a guy named Gilbert Prey. And Gilbert Prey was he was a carpenter, joined the Army. I think he did a really good job. And after the war, he went back and he was a carpenter again. He went right back to the same job that he had. And then the 13th New York, commanded by a guy named Leonard. So they're out there. And as Prey is getting into position, he's ordered. So there's a couple different versions of this one as well. So as Prey is getting into position along where that windy road is by the short tower today, where the monument is, he's ordered to go to the right of the 13th Massachusetts. So, and he writes this letter in 1902. So he's ordered to go to the right of the 13th Mass. And then as he's going to the right of the 13th Mass, General Robinson yells, "Colonel Prey, where, add expletive, are you going?" And Prey's like,
"Where the
where you told me to go?"
Yeah.
And so then he said, get up here to the left of the 13th. And so Prey's like, I noticed that where I was, all I had to do is tell my men the left face and march up. And he said, it was kind of funny because he said, I did it better than General Robinson could have done it on dress parade. So now you have the 104th New York to the left of the 13th Mass. The 13th Mass is down to the right, going down the hill toward where the railroad tracks are today. And then you have, again, that same V formation where you have, so the left of the 104th New York is in contact with the 97th New York. So the 97th New York from Baxter's brigade stayed there. And so in connection with them is going to be the rest of Paul's brigade. So now you have these one brigade at this point covering this whole line, trying to cover this whole line. Okay, so then the Confederates are coming across, and this is where I think there were a couple different attacks. Confederates are coming across by sort of where the V is, where the Emmitsburg Road connects today over to the north, and Prey writes that he ordered his men to charge the Confederates coming across there. And he said, in his letter, he wrote, "This is the first time that you didn't listen, that you didn't obey me right away. And I said, I will lead you boys. And then I led you and you followed me up to the road and we captured those Confederates." The thing that Prey mentioned, though, one of the things he mentioned is that he brought Confederate prisoners back and he gave them to the 13th Massachusetts, and he was upset that the 13th Massachusetts claimed credit for them. Okay, so as Prey is getting into position, and in the area behind the line of the 104th New York, General Paul is wounded. It's a serious wounding. He's blinded for life. The ball enters his right temple and comes out his left eye. And interestingly, Prey said the ball damaged his right eye, but the left eye looked fine to me. So, and then if you read other newspaper accounts, people said Paul was killed. So, you get a whole wide variety of confusion. So, okay, so Paul's down. We're down one brigade. We're down a brigade commander. Okay, next guy in line is Colonel Leonard of the 13th Mass. Okay, so he's wounded in the arm. So who's the next in line from Leonard is a guy named Batchelder, not that Batchelder, but a different Batchelder. Okay, so now, so we have Paul down, we have Leonard down. Who's the next guy in command? Adrian Root, 94th New York. So Adrian Root, he's over by the woods, over to the south, and an artillery shell went off. It must have been K-shot or shell. It went off and exploded in front of him, like right in front of his face, and it just stunned him, I guess. I mean, I don't have a diagnosis, but it seems that he was more than likely had a pretty serious concussion. So he was down. His horse was killed. So he was down. So then Colonel Prey said to General Robinson, the brigade is getting demoralized. There's no commander. So Robinson said, where's Leonard? Leonard's down. Where's Root? Don't know. You're the next in charge. You take over. Okay. So now Prey is by the order of General Robinson in charge of the brigade. So things are getting really bad at this point. We're 2:30ish, going on 3 o'clock. Paul's guys have been there for a while now. They're starting to run low on ammunition. The 97th New York is going to pull out. Okay, so that leaves a huge gap between the 94th New York, the 107th PA, and the 16th Maine. So now this is hard to put together. But the only thing that to me makes sense is that those guys shifted down. So Cutler's guys are pulling out of the woods. The 3 regiments of Paul's brigade are shifting down toward the Emmitsburg Road, so their line is contracting quite a bit, and the Confederate line is not contracting; it's growing. So we get more Confederates coming with the attack by Ramseur, and you have them coming down the Emmitsburg Road, extending down beyond where they were before by the McLean Farm. Okay, so at this point, the 11th Corps is having a lot of its own problems, right? So they're not going to be able to help anymore. The artillery from the 11th Corps, the 45th New York, they're not going to be able to assist Robinson's division, Paul's brigade, as the Confederates continue to come across. So when down to the right end of the 104th New York, you have Prey leading another charge across toward the Emmitsburg Road. So I don't know why Prey survived. He's leading all these charges all over the place. There's bullets flying everywhere. And he says, at this point we had 7 flag bearers down. So we look at, we look at units losing flag bearers. The 104 or the 107th New York, the flag bearer ended up, or 107th PA, I'm sorry, ended up tearing its flag off the staff, so it didn't get captured. So we hear about different units, suffering casualties and losing flag bearers and having things like that happen. But we don't always hear about all of them. So the 13th Mass down at the bottom of the hill, the base of Oak Ridge, they're going to go out and attack the Confederates. They're going to swing out across the Emmitsburg Road and attack the Confederates. They're going to take some prisoners. And it's kind of confusing who these prisoners are, whether they're Alabamians, whether they're North Carolinians. Are they Ramseur's guys? They're probably North Carolinians based on what these guys talk about. So then they're gonna then Batchelder's regiment, now that used to be Leonard's regiment, is gonna pull back. And then they're going to go to General Reynolds, I said General Reynolds. Sorry about that. General Robinson and say, dead by now. And say, there's too many Confederates coming at us. We need reinforcements. We can't hold these guys back. So, Robinson himself gets off the horse and he's looking through the cartridge boxes for bullets and things for these guys, because they just don't have any ammunition, and they're taking tremendous casualties. These guys are getting shot. One of the things that you don't really think about as much is how many of these guys are casualties, and they're just not functional anymore. Right. So what happens is the 104th New York, the 13th Mass are going to start falling back, and they're already on the east of Oak Ridge, so they're going to be sort of falling back, and they're going to talk about, and I think I'm not an 11th Corps hater. I think they did a good job personally, but Prey says the 11th Corps guys were running away. And that was the view from, and that was a 1902 letter. So who knows what he thought at the time. Right. But so the 104th and the 13th are going to start pulling back toward the railroad cut. And then the 94th, the 107th, and the 16th Maine are going to start falling back as well. The 16th Maine starts falling back. And then Robinson goes to them, sends an orderly, goes to them and says, you guys have to go up to this position and hold it. And then Robinson comes to them a little while later, and he gives them the order. Colonel Tilden, go up there, hold those men back while the rest of the brigade retreats and the rest of the whole Union Army retreats. You just hold back those thousands of Confederates.
Yeah.
So they're sent up there, and they're really the unit gets all the attention, but all these guys are being, they're being decimated. So 16th Maine, depending on the accounts you read, they fired a couple volleys and then they started to fall back, and then they're going to continue falling back to the railroad cut where they're basically going to be surrounded. The flag that the 97th New York captured was recaptured by the Confederates as they were retreating. As 104th New York fell back, they were in the area of the railroad cut when the retreat is just a pretty horrific experience for these guys in itself. One account was there was a it had to be a soldier from the 14th Brooklyn, because they were Chaucers and they had the Chaucer uniform. So at one point, a cannonball came and hit one of those guys and basically ripped them apart. Because the one guy from the 104th New York said the arm of this guy hit the flag bearer and knocked him down. Oh, that's a pretty horrific experience.
Yeah.
And so they continue to retreat. Many of them are captured as they go through town. Many of them are captured on the ridge there. So and then as they retreat back through town, they're sort of split up in different places, and they're retreating back through town. So the survivors eventually make it back to Cemetery Ridge. And they're essentially that night, Robinson's division is put into position around the Bryan farm, where the Second Corps will relieve them the next day. And then they're sort of moved between places. But so as they're retreating, so we have, we lost Leonard, we lost Paul, we lost Root. We have Prey in oral command of the brigade. When they retreat back, what Robinson does is he takes Richard Coulter, Fighting Dick, by the way, I think this is interesting. In the Mexican War, he was with John Gary from the 12th Corps at Gettysburg, and he had this like pathological hatred of Gary. Apparently he kept a journal, and it was at the University of Michigan, and it was transcribed, and the guy who transcribed it, he said it was almost comical that Coulter just kept writing how much he hated Gary. Sadly, the journal itself has been lost, but I guess the transcription survives. But yeah, Coulter just hated John Gary for whatever reason. I don't know if that's a common thing, John Gary, but so they retreat back. As they're retreating, what I was saying is, as they're retreating, as they get back to Cemetery Hill, Coulter is taken by Robinson from Baxter's brigade. His whole regiment is taken to Paul's brigade, and Coulter is put in charge of the brigade. Okay, so what do they do on the night of the 1st? They're basically in that position. The morning of the 2nd, they're relieved. They're sent over to in the neighborhood of the cemetery. And then during the course of the fighting on July 2nd, they're sent to different parts of the field. When the Confederates are attacking Cemetery Ridge, the First Corps is sent over there. Robinson's guys are sent over there. And when they get there, they don't end up really doing a whole lot of fighting because when they got there, the fighting had sort of died down. So then they're sent back so they basically shift back and forth behind the U.S. lines during the second day. And then on the third day, they're sent up by somewhere in the neighborhood of Ziegler Grove. And Coulter is up there, and he's near the stone wall, and he can't find his flag. And he's looking for his flag bearer, and he says, "Adjutant, get over here." The adjutant comes over, like, "Where's my flag bearer?" And the adjutant's like, "I don't know." So Coulter's, he said, "Go find him," and he's using, of course, some profanity sprinkled in there, probably. So Coulter finds the flag bearer hiding behind the stone wall. He said, "I snaked him out from behind the stone wall," and there was an artillery shell that had hit the stone wall, that had hit in a certain area of the stone wall. So he took the flag, he shook it out, and he put the the flagpole right where that artillery shell had landed, and he said, "If I don't get you killed in 10 minutes, flag bearer, I'll put you up amongst the guns." So then he said to the adjutant, he said, he doesn't know it, but I put him in a really safe place because a shell rarely hits in the same place twice. So Coulter then is riding his horse down along the line, and he's wounded. He gets shot in the shoulder. Okay, so now what happens is Prey is overlooked again, and Robinson goes to Baxter's brigade and takes a guy named Peter Lyle from the 90th PA, and he brings him over to command the brigade. So I'm not really sure. The question comes up all the time: why was Prey overlooked? And the answer is I'm not really sure. There are a couple possibilities. There was a letter that he and other officers signed in December of 1862 asking for Adrian Root to be put in charge of the brigade, and maybe that offended someone. And so we don't really know, but Prey was not given command of the brigade. So he's actually not even officially, he hasn't ever been officially in charge of the brigade, even orally, because, he doesn't appear on any of the signage or anything like that.
Right.
But he was in charge orally by General Robinson. So Paul's brigade actually sustained the highest casualties of any brigade in the U.S. Army at Gettysburg for their fighting that they did there on July 1st on Oak Ridge.
That's funny, because you don't think of that because you never really hear much about them.
No,
usually units that suffer high casualties,
right?
It's all you hear about.
Right, the Iron Brigade.
The Iron Brigade, yeah. Right. 26 North Carolina.
Yeah, those North Carolinians.
So, all right. So, 6 questions. Lentz is in the back there. Mike, you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I've got a few questions here.
What a shock.
That's not a surprise.
Well, do you want to save them for the question part of the show?
No, actually, this is actually a comment right here.
All right, go ahead.
Gabriel Paul's brigade, not one regiment in that entire brigade suffered less than 90 captured.
Right.
You're looking at a significant, upwards of 66% casualties within, even as high as seeing 68% casualties in that one brigade. And yet now a whole lot is spoken of them. Also, one of the more famous casualties or infamous casualties from the battle comes from this division. Chaplain Horatio Howell of the 90th Pennsylvania.
Right.
He was killed on the steps of the Lutheran Church on Chambersburg Street.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
And, of course, the famous story of the Confederate soldier coming out, mistaking him for an officer, and when he doesn't immediately surrender, then the Confederate soldier shoots him.
Right. There are actually several versions of that story.
Yeah.
But in each version, he's killed.
Yeah, that's kind of the outcome, yeah.
The end is the same.
Yeah. So, but I do have if you don't mind me doing the questions
absolutely.
now. Looking at this, and it seems as if the first day always gets kind of short shrift compared to the other days. Mm-hmm. What's the reasoning why? Could it be that the First Corps doesn't exist in the 1864 campaigns, and so really there isn't that institutional memory to be able to continue saying, hey, we fought here, we fought desperately here, and to champion their own cause?
I think so. There are a couple of questions that we got. We didn't get to the questions yet, but Michael is forcing us into that.
Yeah, Mike.
Is what happened? First. I think it was very similar to the 12th Corps in that, where the 12th Corps was transferred. They weren't, they didn't cease to exist, but I think it was about that issue is that the reports were sort of overlooked and they just didn't, they didn't get the attention that they thought that it deserves. And I mean, look at, I think Robinson, in his official report, he didn't have anything from Paul. He didn't have a whole lot of information from those guys. If you look at Root's official report, it basically doesn't exist because he was wounded and his replacement didn't really write much because he basically just said, well, there's like one sentence. He's like, well, Root was wounded, so I don't really know anything. and the 107th didn't really write that much. So their ORs are really skimpy. And I think that might be a part of it, part of the reason why they didn't really get all that much attention, because the commanders who were in command of the regiments during the fighting were wounded, and their subordinate commanders who were then promoted to those positions didn't really know as much about what to write because they weren't there as long in that position. So.
All right. So anything else, Mike, or do you want to save them for the question?
I'll save them for the question.
All right. That's a good idea. I think that's a good idea. Hold on. My microphone's all off here. Sorry about that. All right. So what we're going to do then is take a break. And when we come back from the break, we're going to get the questions from our patrons over at patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg. They submit the questions ahead of time, and although it seems like Tim didn't get his questions ahead of time today, but I printed them out for him.
That's all right.
We'll get to those in a second. And people watching, patrons and YouTube alike, we're going to set up the phone lines in a couple of minutes. Just stick around on the live feed here, and I will let you know when the phone lines are open, and you can call in and ask your own questions. Just stick with us. We'll be right back.
The Gettysburg Museum of History, located right here in the center of Gettysburg, PA. Owner and curator Eric Dorr grew up here and has spent his life collecting and preserving history through artifacts ranging from the Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, World War II, presidential items, pop culture, and more. His museum is free and open to visitors Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m., where you can stop by and immerse yourself in some of the most amazing artifacts that you would never believe exist in the middle of Gettysburg. If you're a fan of Band of Brothers and Everything Easy Company, you'll love his exhibit featuring the Dick Winters collection and artifacts from D-Day. You can even own your own piece of history by buying one of the many relics they have for sale in the museum and on the website GettysburgMuseumofHistory.com. The Gettysburg Museum of History is a non-profit 501c3 organization with a foundation that allows all purchases and donations to keep the museum operating and open free of charge. They have been featured on the History Channel, the Travel Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and the Science Channel. Now you can check them out on American Artifact, the series on the YouTube channel, The History Underground. And on a personal note, I'd like to thank the Gettysburg Museum of History for being a sponsor of Addressing Gettysburg by providing the studio that we recently moved to and do all of our shows from. So that's the Gettysburg Museum of History at 219 Baltimore Street or the GettysburgMuseumofHistory.com. Movies and documentaries about history are spread out across the internet, and their quality is often suspect. History Fix delivers curated historic programming to your preferred device using their website or branded apps. Join History Fix for movies, documentaries, short films, and how-tos. Content covers historic eras ranging from the 1st to the 21st centuries. Their team of curators brings you the most comprehensive and authentic historical content available. Addressing Gettysburg podcast fans receive 20% off their first annual subscription. So what are you waiting for? Sign up at www.historyfix.com and use promo code ADGBURG. That's ADGBURG. Every subscription begins with a 7-day risk-free trial. And after signing up, download the History Fix app on your smartphone. So go to www.historyfix.com and use promo code ADGBURG. That's ADGBURG on an annual subscription. Escape into history with History Fix.
If you're a lover of history, then go to trhistorical.com. There, you'll find apparel, drinkware, decor, and more, featuring a wide range of subjects from the ancient world to the Cold War. Looking to make an impression with the perfect gift? Well, TR Historical now offers a vintage wrapping service for a truly unique presentation. And our listeners will save 15% when using promo code GBURG1863 at checkout. So go to trhistorical.com. TR Historical, for the love of history.
For the Historian has a wide variety of titles, new and used, of military books from publishers like Osprey, Gettysburg Publishing, Stackpole, Savas Beatty, UNC Press, and more. I make it a point to go there once a week because I have new bookshelves to fill and I never know what treasures I'll find, and neither will you. They even have toy soldiers, model kits, games, children's books, and more. So stop by and check them out on your next visit to Gettysburg, or better yet, order right now online at forthehistorian.com and mention that you heard about them on Addressing Gettysburg in the Note to Seller box, and they will refund you your shipping. And if you call 717-685-5207 or stop by the store on your next visit and mention us, you'll get 20% off retail price. That's forthehistorian.com or 717-685-5207.
Who can forget the sounds of the 60s?
The 1860s. I can't, and you can't either. Now, there's Marching Through Georgia, the exciting new album by Billy Webster. All of your favorite hits of the 1860s in one place. Such hits as Gary Owens, The Battle Hymn of the Republic, All Quiet Along the Potomac Tonight, Marching Through Georgia, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? Go to billysongs.com and order your digital download of Billy Webster's Marching Through Georgia today. That's billysongs.com.
Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg's premier museum, is housed in the historic Lutheran Seminary building constructed in 1832, a witness to the first day of battle. The museum's 3 floors of exhibits connect visitors to the dilemmas that led to the Civil War, provide a powerful and personal view of the battle's first day, and explore one of the battlefield's largest hospitals. No visit to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center is complete without a guided tour of the building's famous cupola, where on the eve of battle, officers and civilians saw thousands of Confederate soldiers' campfires burning to the west, and Brigadier General John Buford watched for vital federal reinforcements as fighting erupted on the morning of July 1st. Today, you can stand where Buford stood and discover how this view helped chart the course of the Battle of Gettysburg. Your trip to Gettysburg is not complete without a serious visit to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg's premier museum. Purchase tickets online at seminaryridgemuseum.org or call 717-339-1300.
To get tickets or a cupola tour, listeners may call or walk in and mention addressing Gettysburg, or by ordering online using the promo code AG1863 for 20% off.
Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. It began here.
There's a devil to pay.
Attention all aficionados of Union Civil War music, your ensemble awaits. The National Association of Civil War Musicians, founded by the Grand Army of the Republic, serves as a beacon for those who cherish the notes that stirred a nation. Our association is a hub where the scores of the past are preserved and the spirit of camaraderie persists. Immerse yourself in the melodies that played through history. For example, take July 3rd, 1863. As Lee's cannons unleashed a maelstrom, the Philadelphia Brigade Band exemplified valor. Positioned at the heart of the onslaught, their music defied the cacophony of the largest artillery barrage in North American history. Their presence was a deliberate symbol. If the band could stand tall and play, then the infantrymen can lay in wait to hold that crucial ground. Today, we keep this and other memories alive. No matter if you sound the fife, beat the drum, or swell the brass, your contribution breathes life into our mission. Let's commemorate, collaborate, and preserve together. Step forward and join the ranks today. Visit nacwm.org. That's nacwm.org. The National Association of Civil War Musicians, honoring all the brave soldiers who dared to wage a war with only an instrument.
Civil War Trails is the world's largest open-air museum, offering over 1,500 sites and stories for you to explore. Each Civil War Trail site has an interpretive sign to help fuel your imagination as you stand on remote mountaintop artillery positions, in fields where thundering cavalry charges took place, or in now quiet downtowns where raids, riots, or raiders shattered the peace. Over 60 Civil War Trail sites allow you to stand in the footsteps of the Gettysburg campaign across Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and of course, Pennsylvania. In fact, they are expanding further into Pennsylvania now with the latest sites in Wrightsville, Hanover, and Chambersburg. As you travel the trail, you'll find more than just great history. Beyond battlefields, great barbecue, beer, and bourbon await. Here's a pro tip: carry cash and never book your day completely to ensure that you can take that gravel road, explore that hiking trail, or pick up an amazing artifact from that awesome antique shop you find along the way. Request a free brochure shipped right to your door at civilwartrails.org, and be sure to snap a hashtag sign selfie next time you are out exploring. Click the link to Civil War Trails in our show notes. Follow Civil War Trails and create some history of your own.
Hey everybody, it's Matt, and I'm here with Veronica and Bethany from the upcoming spin-off podcast, That's What She Said. And we just want to tell you about the Get Out of the Car Tour season.
Oh, wait, Matt.
Yeah.
I haven't been on one yet.
What's that?
I can't do this. I haven't been on one yet.
Oh, Beth. No, that's fine. You're all right. Veronica, you've been on one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Veronica. So what would you say to people who haven't been, they've been thinking about coming? Maybe they should come out, right?
What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? That's exactly, right? What's your favorite thing about the Get Out of the Car Tours?
The camaraderie.
The camaraderie. Of course. It's the same people very often. We see the same people every month.
New friends.
And it's new friends, new faces.
You're learning history with a group. You're not just learning it on your own, and it's a fun environment, very welcoming group of people that have now become like extended family, right?
That's right.
Family
Absolutely.
In Gettysburg.
And if you want to know what the rest of the schedule is, just go to addressinggettysburg.com, go to the Tours and Events tab, and find the full schedule there. And we'll see you on the field.
See you there. I'll try.
And we'll see you on the field.
See you there. Yes, I will. Yay!
All right, let me get the last goddamn word in. And we'll see you on the field. All right,
You're listening to the Addressing Gettysburg podcast with Matt Callery.
All right, we're back now with Tim Pierce, and we are talking about Robinson's Division. Before we get to our questions, Tim wanted to add a couple of things here. He wants to highlight a few fellers.
Yeah, so again, I like to give the enlisted guys a little attention because you just talk about the officers and they're just not that interesting.
Exactly.
So there's one guy that in particular, his name's Ebenezer Johnson.
Great name.
If you can.
Here, I'll hold it up and you can talk.
So he's actually unusually mentioned in Robinson's report and Coulter's report. He was first Maine cavalryman, and he was an orderly for them, and he must have done a really exceptional job because they actually mentioned him. Both of them mentioned him in their ORs. And one of them, so Robinson said, I honestly don't remember if it was Robinson or Coulter who said it, that the stripe should be exchanged for the epaulet. When we make officers of such men, the Army is better off. But they never did. He was discharged in 1864 as a sergeant. But you know, an interesting thing, and because I have really horrible research skills sometimes and writing things down whenever I find them, I found an account where he potentially rode out around the McLean barn by himself to reconnoiter where the Confederates were.
Really?
But I haven't found it again, and I don't know if it's actually true, but I did read an account that he possibly did that, which is pretty amazing. Maybe that's why they wrote him up.
Pretty ballsy.
Yeah, absolutely. So another guy, we talk about flag bearers, and not too many flag bearers show up on a monument, but the 13th Massachusetts is unusual. So you get this guy, Roland Morris, who was a flag bearer of the 13th Mass, and the story about him is on the way to Gettysburg, he went into not a rival, but he went into another regimental camp to visit some friends, and he was removed as a flag bearer. The flag was taken away from him by Leonard, and on the morning of July 1st, marching to Gettysburg, he begged to get the flag back.
Really?
And he was a German. He was an immigrant from Germany. Very gregarious. The men said he was always singing and talking and keeping the morale up. But then sadly during the fight on July 1st, he was killed. Mortally wounded, killed. I'm not really sure what the difference is. He died.
He begged for it too. That's the worst part.
He did. And the interesting thing is, and I'm not going to remember the name of the town in Germany, but members of the 45th New York and the 11th Corps and Morris were actually from the same town in Germany, which is interesting.
It is interesting
to me. But so I wanted to mention those guys because they don't get enough attention.
Yeah, imagine like you're begging to get the flag. I mean, usually I'd be like, if somebody took the flag away from me, I'd be like, thank God.
Yeah.
All I had to do was go talk to guys in another camp, and I would have done that years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it for the guys?
That is it.
All right.
Only 2 enlisted guys.
Very good. And so let's see here, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to submit questions to Ask a Gettysburg Guide, you have to become a patron over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. Any level of Patreon patronage will get you the right to ask questions during a show, but it's only our first lieutenants who get to call in during the show because they'll be the only ones knowing that it's going on. Here we go. We're going to start with our first question here from Naptown Bob. He says, Robinson wrote Meade disappointed in his, Meade's, report of the 2nd Division. What did Meade say that upset him, and did Meade lose confidence in Robinson as he did Doubleday? Did Meade ever give due credit? Did Robinson hold a grudge like Doubleday? What did his beard think?
What did his beard think?
I love this audience.
Speaking of the beard, the famous comment that someone said at some point,
yes,
Robinson, in an army of hairy men, Robinson was the hairiest man I've ever seen. I think that might have been Small from the 16th Maine who said that. One of the only survivors of the 16th Maine.
Biggie.
So yeah, we talked sort of alluded to it earlier, where the Robinson's division didn't get much credit, and then he wrote to Meade. As far as I know, there was no like bad feeling or repercussion or anything like that. Not that I'm aware of. I know that Robinson was definitely still in the Army because in 1864 he's going to lose his leg down in the wilderness. So as far as I know, there was no like lasting issues and no bad blood between Meade and Robinson that I know of.
All right. Tom Plefka says, can Tim fill us in on Robinson's letter dated November 15th, 1863 to General Meade and his disappointment with Meade? So it's kind of the same question there.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
And I can't specifically because I don't know about the letter. So,
well, that would be a good answer. What about 6 questions length? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah.
6 questions?
You seem to know everything.
In this case, I'm not entirely familiar with that letter.
Whoa.
So I couldn't.
Yeah, I can't.
Whoa.
I'm not going to surmise what it is. I have an idea, but I'm not going to go unless I know for sure.
Well, what's your surmisation?
Yeah, no, I'm
wow, you're not even going to... I mean, you're not even a licensed guide. It's okay if you don't have the right answer.
Not even a licensed guide yet.
Yet, of course, yes.
I can't hear him. I don't know if I'm...
You can't hear him? I know why. Hold on a second here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah, you can't hear him. You probably can't hear yourself either, could you?
Okay.
I don't want to hear myself.
Hold on.
All right.
State the question, please.
There you go, Mike. All right, now you should be able to hear everything now.
I can.
Okay, good. All right. Rich Snyder says, I have 3 questions for Tim regarding Robinson's division. The first is in regards to their position of their fight after leaving the breastworks at the seminary. Was there any way for them to receive additional ammunition supplies? I have read that this was a reason, running out of ammo, for their withdrawal towards Cemetery Hill, but I've also been told that there's no way for them to hold the area because the 11th Corps had already begun retreating, and they were also severely outnumbered by this point.
There's a lot in there.
There is a lot in there.
I think that...
That's only the first question.
That is only the first question. He's given 6 questions length to run for his money.
I know.
Yes, they're absolutely running out of ammunition. There was no way to resupply them. There wasn't much of a resupply for the other parts of the First Corps, the Iron Brigade and Biddle's Brigade. There just wasn't really much ammunition coming up. So being that Robinson was even much farther removed, there was no way to get it to them. And so they were, like I said, they were going through the cartridge boxes of the dead and wounded trying to find ammunition. Withdrawal towards Cemetery Hill.
And then there's...
Yeah. Okay, so again, this is debated endlessly, whether, the 1st and 11th Corps, what was happening between them. I think based on my knowledge that both of them basically start retreating at the same time independently, and that there was just there was no way. They were being overwhelmed. They were being hit by superior numbers, out of ammunition, and there was just no way for them to hold that position. So I think that they were just being outnumbered at that point, and there was no way to go. And I don't like that Prey wrote that the 11th Corps was running away because, I mean, obviously that's his opinion, but I think I think Robinson's division was running away, so I'm not really sure how Prey can
the
be
rest of the
critical
First Corps was running away too.
Maybe the 11th Corps could have said, the First Corps was running away.
Yeah.
So we usually don't look at it from that perspective, though. We usually don't give the 11th Corps a voice.
How about everybody was running?
Everybody was running. I know I would have been.
Yeah, I would have been too. My second question is in regards to the official report of Robinson, where he mentions the capture of 1,000 Confederate prisoners. Can Tim put a time frame of when these prisoners were captured and sent to the rear? How many soldiers would have to be taken off the fighting line to escort that amount of prisoners, and to what area were they taken and secured? Do you want to hear that part of the? I think I have it because I was reading it before. Go ahead. You start answering and I'll find it and then I'll read it.
Okay, so I think the answer to when they were taken would be sort of continuously.
Yeah.
Whenever the 88th and the 83rd went up across the Emmitsburg Road, and then when Iverson's brigade. So you're talking about between 1 o'clock and 3:30-ish, where they're starting to take prisoners. At one point, like I mentioned earlier, that Prey took prisoners, gave them to Batchelder, and Batchelder counted them as his prisoners, and they're just going to be taken back to a holding area, like eventually on the eastern side of Cemetery Ridge, but they're going to be taking them pretty much continuously. There was one, I think the 97th New York. There was a company that was so the question about how many U.S. soldiers were used to guard them. I don't have a number, but I know one company was marched off the line to do that. So there were, they would take guys out of the ranks to go guard the prisoners, but I don't have a number. And at this point, a company is like 30 guys. So,
yeah.
So somewhere around that.
It says here, this is the part, it's right in the beginning of Robinson's report. It says, the enemy, however, soon after brought up fresh forces in increased masses when, finding the position so seriously threatened, I sent for and brought up the First Brigade and placed part of it in the position first occupied by Baxter's brigade and the remaining battalions as a support to his second position. The enemy now made repeated attacks on the division, in all of which he was handsomely repulsed, with the loss of 3 flags and about 1,000 prisoners.
So 1,000 prisoners. And again, prisoner counting is kind of sketchy, but, they do their best to enhance their numbers. But so that was basically the part I talked about with them leaving the seminary and going over to Oak Ridge, where, Baxter was there first and then Paul came up later.
Yeah. Okay, where did my questions go? Here they are. All right, then his third question is, my last question has to do with a post-battle communication that Robinson sent General Meade. Oh, it's another one about General Meade.
Yeah, exactly.
Robinson writes that he is disappointed Meade did not acknowledge his division. Does Tim know if the omission in Meade's official report was ever rectified? I'm a big fan of Robinson, whose bravery and lead from the front attitude are the same things I admire about Meade. I don't think there was animosity between these two, but was there hard feelings?
Like I said, not that I know of. Again, I'm not really familiar with the letter. I'm not familiar with the whole situation. Now that you all have asked me the question about it, I will be. But but right now, I'm sorry, I can't really say. But as far as I know, there wasn't any bad feeling between them. But Meade, Meade did rectify the ORs in several places whenever he found out that he made him that there was an error, because imagine these guys are trying to put slips of paper and all these different reports together, and I would feel like it's kind of inevitable that something's going to be left out. But he was really gracious and really good at putting additions in whenever they were called for. So while I can't specifically answer, he did do that, for other people. So I think he probably did for Robinson, but I'd have to go and research it.
Brian Derenick says, can you please talk about the placement of Baxter's brigade in support of Wadsworth's division on the late morning of July 1st? And was there any effort made to try to link up with the 11th Corps as they came online further to the north and east?
Yeah, I talked about the 11th, about 400 yards, but they ideally would have liked to connect with the 11th Corps. That was the goal.
Wasn't Howard was originally supposed to extend the line north, or not?
Right.
Well, yeah, roughly north. No, not north.
Well, okay, so
I mean, it was supposed to extend the line up Oak Hill and not across the Gettysburg Plain like he did.
Right. So again, just like everything else, there's a little controversy. There was an article in Blue and the Gray where this guy, I can't remember the name of the author, but he was talking about how potentially it was never the plan to go up to Oak Hill, but pretty much everybody else thinks that Howard was intending to go up to Oak Hill, and that's why, and that was in response to Rhodes coming out and putting his cannons there, and that's why Baxter was sent over to Oak Ridge in the first place, because Rhodes came out. So it was all in reaction to everything else that was happening. So there was an attempt to try to connect with the 11th Corps. There just weren't enough soldiers, and the Robinson Division did go there to assist Cutler from Wadsworth, and because Cutler and Robinson did make contact, their lines did join, but again they were both out sort of in the middle of nowhere, in Wills Woods and then on the ridge. So there was, even though they made contact, there just weren't enough of them, because you had Daniel coming in from one direction, you had Ramseur and Iverson and O'Neill coming in from another direction. So they were, regardless of where they were, there was not. I don't think there was any way that they could stand there.
All right, and we've got our call from Dennis, who, even if he's not, I'm going to say he's a first lieutenant over on Patreon.com. And Dennis, what's your question for Tim Pierce?
Hey, Alderson Broderson, Matt.
Alderson Broderson to you as well.
Indeed. Hey, Tim, thanks for your service, shipmate. Retired Navy myself. God bless you. Well done. Cool. My question comes along the lines of other questions that have already been presented about the POWs that the 88th Pennsylvania brought in. I've looked and looked. I can't find anybody that writes about them following, their withdrawal back through town. It had to have been insane trying to corral up to 1,000 prisoners through the town as they're retreating. It must have been crazy how they returned these prisoners back to Cemetery Ridge. Can you point me in the direction where anybody writes about this? I can't even find. You mentioned that there was a provost marshal that was with Robinson's division, but I can't even read where that was there. Help me out, brother.
I wish I could. I don't know. Honestly, it's just one of the parts of the battle that there isn't really a whole lot of information about, at least that I know of. I mean, I will definitely try to find out and research it. And if Matt has a way to contact you, we can...
just shoot me an email, Dennis, and I will then add Tim to the email, and you guys can take it from there.
Okay, great.
I'm
that's
sorry.
A great part of the story of the first day's battle that it's just not told.
You're right. It isn't. At least not. Only like sort of a cursory view of it, because I think they're just so much worried about survival in the fighting that they don't really talk about that.
And just trying to get through the town, the chaos of getting through town, the Cemetery Ridge. That was insane. And you're doing that with killing 1,000 prisoners. I don't. That's nuts.
Yeah, I think part of it, just thinking about it, a cursory view, is that they were marched back there. They were moved back there before the U.S. troops were retreating, so it wasn't quite as chaotic, maybe going through town. But I'm just me sort of thinking it through. But I'll definitely research it and try to get an answer for you.
All right. Thanks, brother. Hey, God bless you. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you very much, Dennis. All right. Well, let's see. Anything else that you want to add there, Tim?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. Very good. you were the first guide who, when you get the see, I think you did get this at one point, because when in the beginning it says recommended books, and then there's a bunch of books that are filled in here, so I'm imagining it has to be you that put them in.
Okay, so originally I was supposed to come on in the fall, and I did that, and then that got canceled.
Right, but that link still would have worked, and you would have gotten the questions if you had checked it.
I don't even know where the link was.
Anyway, all right, so no problem. But anyway, Tim has recommended these books, ladies and gentlemen. The Gettysburg Campaign Atlas by Phil Latino.
Oh, man. Typo.
It's Lano, not Latino.
Yeah, sorry.
The Maps of Gettysburg by Bradley Gottfried. We've had him on many times. Another person we've had on a bunch, David Martin, Gettysburg, July 1.
So sorry to interrupt, Matt, but that is a really good that is a really good book on day one. David Martin. I was going to mention him earlier, but I couldn't remember his name. That's an outstanding book. He has some super great details in there.
Yeah, and he's a good writer. And then series 1, volume 27 of the ORs. Mm-hmm. It's in part 1.
Part 1.
Is it part 1 they call it? I guess it's part 1, yeah.
Part 1, yeah.
And then Gettysburg, the First Day by Harry W. Font. So if you don't have those books already, get a hold of them. Of course, you can get them at For the Historian, as you all know. Otherwise, that's it. Yeah. Tim, how do you think you did in your first time?
I hope I did all right.
I think you did fine. Mike, what do you think? Did he do all right?
Oh, he did great. And I would be remiss with saying that he's been great in the AG Book Club. He brings that expert level into every meeting, and it's fantastic to have him there. But yeah, today was just fantastic.
You're laying on a little thick there, Mike.
Yeah. He slipped me a 20 on a table, so I had to, make it worth it.
Well, no, but that's true. You are in the book club, which I would imagine for book clubbies, Michael, or attendees, I guess, or members is the word I'm looking for. Having a licensed battlefield guide in there has got to be an added bonus.
Oh, it's fantastic. Right? Yeah, it is. I mean, with the deeper questions, we refer to him. It's not like George Pickett in the movie. He didn't graduate last in his class at West Point, but we do refer the more complicated strategic questions to Tim.
Yeah. No, and and the people in there, they have a level of knowledge, and some are beginners and some are pretty good.
Yeah.
I was surprised Casey didn't say anything.
Didn't call in,
but yeah.
Well,
Casey's a first day guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Casey is, and then let's see here. Oh, I see. Brad Balderson said he's been following the whole time with his Latino map book. So,
wow, I'm never going to live that down.
It's just simple typo. It's okay.
But yeah, I want to thank Tim for this. Robinson's Division's not easy to talk about because they don't have an organization like the Iron Brigade after the war that's constantly championing their war experience. So it's not as if there's a plethora of resources that we can turn to, even though this command has a lot of the experienced and they've fought well on multiple battlefields. They have records that are fantastic. It's just that when you research them here at Gettysburg, it's really tough sometimes to get anything that you can really have concrete and really quote. It's tough.
Right. Yeah, you're like I said, the ORs are kind of skimpy a lot of times, and I think it's just out of the fact that they were, they took the highest percentage of casualties, that there's just not enough of them left to really write and to really, like you said, there's no Joshua Chamberlain in Robinson's division, so there's nobody there to champion them, like you said. That's a great point.
And when they're done with here and the reorganization that happens in 1864, they're folded into a new division with Robinson in command in the Fifth Corps. So they still go through the overland campaign.
Right.
So whoever survives here has to go through that meat grinder, and it's tough when the survivors come back after for the dedication, but you get speeches, and that's pretty much it.
Right. And Robinson loses a leg. He's awarded the Medal of Honor, but he loses a leg. Prey is captured at Weldon Railroad with a whole bunch of guys. So it's tough. They have a rest of the war to fight.
So. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Tim. I think it was great having you on. You just You made it easy for me. You just went.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
You just go and you tell a story, and then all I have to do is moderate. That's the way it should be.
And I like that.
Yeah, I do too. It's less work for me.
So no, I mean, I would love to come on again. I have a couple. I'll bring Eric on. We'll talk about the Pennsylvania Reserves again.
There you go. Yeah, anytime you have a subject, excuse me, you have a subject that you want to talk about, just let us know. Best to let Dave know because he sets up the schedule. So just shoot him an email, let him know you want to do another one. You don't need my invitation. You have an open invitation anytime. And that's it. And ladies and gentlemen, you have an open invitation to go become a patron over at patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg.
Be a lieutenant.
First lieutenant. And we will see you all next time. Goodbye. All right.
Whether you're a history enthusiast, reenactor, or someone seeking a unique piece of the past, the Badge Maker has something for everyone and anyone. Don't miss out on owning a piece of history. Shop now at CivilWarCorpsBadges.com and elevate your connection to the Civil War era. That's CivilWarCorpsBadges.com. Thanks for listening.
Our hearts so stout have got us fame, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa, we'll drink down